Hello indie game fans, here's a preview of June with the big caveat that due to the summer showcase season and Steam Next Festival, at the moment there are a fewer than normal number of new releases, so the more interesting picks begins with Tradesman Deal to Dealer, a pixel art management sim RPG in which you play as a travelling merchant attempting to make as much money as possible. You're going to the far corners of the kingdom, buying low and selling high, getting fish from a seaside town and travelling further inland to sell it at a higher price, for example. But of course, will be the target of bandits who want to rob you. Luckily, you can hire a crew of mercenaries to help and can even rob other caravans, adding a turn-based combat twist to the concept, with the pixel art in this looking absolutely gorgeous. A neat-looking farming sim is Sunnyside, a 3D title with more realistic character proportions and environments as compared to the more chibi or stylized art style of other games in the genre. This is set in the Japanese countryside but does have some sci-fi elements since you're accompanied by this flying cat robot drone thing named Sparky, with one of the main objectives being to help it recover lost memories. Other than that, however, it is more of a realistic farming sim that is set in modern-ish times, with the ability to use hoses to water your crops as compared to the watering can, which seems trivial but is quite the difference. There are food processing options like dehydrators or fermentation barrels, the ability to make tofu, soy sauce, cooking oils and more, along with a relationship system and characters to get to know. Not shown here is a card-based, turn-based battle system when you explore the caves, so there is some combat element, looking like a great take on the genre. Okay, this next title might be not indie at all, but I was perhaps as surprised as you, since Soulmask seems to have come out of nowhere and blew up in popularity during the most recent Steam Next Festival, being an MMO sandbox survival crafting title with a tribal theme, and is of interest in 2024 since this has been the year of the survival game. Think Pell World, for example. You are exploring the world and gathering resources, working together with other players to build up an encampment, with the titular Soulmask granting you different powers and abilities. Combat looks like a highlight, with massive battles between a huge number of characters, and has both online multiplayer support for up to 70 players on a single server, offline single-player support, and even LAN host or private server options, and looks to be the next big hit. There isn't that much information on the developer, since the social media accounts with the name Campfire Studios points towards another much more indie team, with people on the Steam forums speculating that this is from a Chinese developer, which tend to have very large teams, so while technically it might not be an indie team in the traditional sense, it's a cool, weird thing that might be of interest, possibly giving Conan Exiles a run for their money. Here's a neat-looking roguelike tactics title named GUNCHO, one with a Wild West theme, with the gimmick being that you need to manage the revolver cylinder rotation so that you have bullets in the chamber to fire at enemies. Moving, shooting, unloading and reloading will affect this, which you need to balance with positioning yourself in the battlefield. There are environmental hazards like explosive barrels and deadly cacti, with the more claustrophobic levels looking intense, and might have a similar kind of satisfaction to Into the Breach, since you can get enemies to attack each other. I was very surprised to see Rolling Hills Make Sushi Make Friends get a release date, since the game seemed like it has been in development forever, easily going back to 2020 when it was first shown off, with the current version looking nothing like the original, for the better in my opinion. For one, you now play as a robot and are serving your human customers sushi as compared to playing as a human serving anthropomorphic animals, mixing the life sim elements of living in a town and purchasing ingredients with the frantic, almost Diner Dash looking gameplay when the restaurant is open. In fact, this might be following in the footsteps of Dave the Diver, so let's see how they make the ingredient gathering part interesting. Galactic Glitch is an action roguelike title from friend of the channel Crunchy Leaf Games, with the main gimmick of giving you a grav gun in addition to your primary and secondary weapons, along with physics to make combat even more engaging. You are shooting and dodging enemy projectiles, using the grav gun to grab onto asteroids and enemy rockets to throw it back at them. You can also rip apart enemies piece by piece, which disables some of their abilities, along with the usual procedural generation for plenty of replayability and should be out sometime next month. It's a good time to be a fan of Heroes of Might and Magic, since developers who are fans finally have the capability to make spiritual successors with recent hits like Songs of Conquest and Heroes Hour, and the next game of interest is Songs of Silence. This mixes turn-based exploration on the overworld along with castle construction elements and strategic combat, but unlike its inspiration, this has auto-battler inspired combat in which your units clash with enemies in real time without your direct input. It looks gorgeous and has a focus on the main narrative campaign, looking awesome, and I hope continues the trend of great spiritual successors. I've been meaning to cover Asuka for a little while now, but at the time, there was no gameplay trailer available, only having a sick looking cinematic intro and screenshots, but now it does, and boy, it sure looks like a prettier, less stylized version of Valheim. This is a Viking survival crafting game that supports up to 4 players, in which you are gathering resources from the land and building your own encampment, but are able to attract NPC villagers to help build out your settlement. You can then craft armor and weapons, equipping yourself so that you can venture further out to explore and slay monsters, more or less being the same in concept to Valheim, so we'll have to see on the execution. 2024 has been the year of the survival crafting game, so this will certainly be of interest, but more interesting is that this comes to us from Sand Sailor Studio, developer of Black the Fall and Boss Guard, which are definitely smaller in scope, so this looks very ambitious in comparison. But again, considering that Valheim was made by a then 5-person team, and according to their website, Sand Sailor is also 5 people, it's possible that they will manage to pull it off as well.
Welcome to Carpentersville, a small town.
One of my most anticipated action-adventure games is #Blood, in which you play as a high school freshman that just so happens to be from a long line of vampire hunters having to take up her hockey stick to fight evil in the small town when it arises. Of course, the highlight has to be the art and animations, looking exactly like a Cartoon Network show from the 90s, and will be no surprise since it comes to us from an animation studio. But with the involvement of Humble Games as their publisher, I'm sure that they would have received help on the gameplay front as well. While there are elements of having to balance high school life, such as attending field hockey practice, the game largely seems to be combat focused around fighting bugs, demons and giant bosses, with it looking great and could be one of the best games of the year.
When the sun goes down, evil rises up in search of one thing: blood.
Pixel art, grimdark, roguelike platformer. Yes, yes and yes please. If you know anything about me, of course you won't be surprised that Dragon is Dead is my jam, an all-action hack-and-slash one of these that looks absolutely fantastic, taking place in a world where the dragons have challenged the gods and were all slain, leaving just the leader of the Dark Dragons, who decided to corrupt the world instead, so you need to battle against the demons and minions that he has created. This looks to be following in the footsteps of games like Blasphemous, Astral Ascent, Dark Devotion, and The Last Faith, mixing the brutal, almost gothic horror grimdark setting with the roguelite replayability, and what can I say? This is my kind of game. It does come to us from Korean developer Team Sunny, who made Blade Assault, which is a decent cyberpunk roguelite platformer, so maybe their experience from making that game will result in this being a better product. Watch this video for more action roguelites.